Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Vancouver Life Real Estate Podcast and YouTube channel. Today, we are very excited to have back with us Mr. Simon Bray, the CEO of REW.ca. Simon is definitely a fan favorite here. Our last episode with him is actually our #1 most downloaded episode ever. So really happy to have you back, Simon. Thanks so much for your time today. Why don't you give our listeners who haven't heard about you or REW, if that's even possible, a little bit about who you are and what REW.ca is.
For sure. Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me back. New year, hopefully some new insights. But yeah, just to start off with who I am, I'm the president at REW. REW is certainly BC's most trafficked real estate website. We connect the demand side and the supply side of the market out here in the west of Canada, and we're looking for new ways to really shape the home seeker's journey over the coming year. So some of the updates I can bring you are just how we're thinking about doing that. But yeah, me in a nutshell, part product guy, part marketing guy, part sales guy, and somehow landed in this real estate software and real estate market world, and I'm really enjoying it.
Fantastic. Appreciate that. So REW.ca, I mean, you guys have been around for a while, and if I got the numbers correct, I think I'm hearing something like upwards of 16 million unique visitors annually here across Canada. And understandably, you guys are kind of on the forefront of the real estate search portal, but you're so much more than that. And I think I read one of the lines here that says, you're Canada's leading search portal, but you're so much more, you're a real estate experience. And I definitely have to agree with that. So maybe give us a bit of insight into the experience that you've created for users on your site and what the big change and rebrand has, or is rather, that you guys just launched.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's a great opportunity to talk to you guys because it's literally a few days after we released the new Real Estate Works brand. We released the new REW.works site, which kind of speaks a lot more about our company and what we're up to. And the type of take, if you like, that we have on the market and how home seekers should be finding their next home. But to your point about experience, yeah, I think that was the epiphany for us is, we've been in this game long enough to understand that real estate is not an industry. There are a lot of components and complex aspects to the transaction of real estate, but ultimately it's a very individual journey. It's a personal life experience for a lot of people. And we're trying to build products and technologies and a platform that really connects with people in the process of that journey. And so, reframing the business and reframing REW is part of that. It's setting ourselves up for, building out a better real estate experience, not necessarily a better industry, but we're hopeful that the great industry partners that we have will come along on that journey with us. And we can actually bring to Canadian home seekers the type of experience that inspires confidence, that overcomes the significant challenges and obstacles that a lot of people are finding in their home buying journey right now. So yeah, Real Estate Works, big brand announcement last week. We got a couple of cool products coming to the market for our realtor partners this week to make it a fulsome, both sides of the market launch. But yeah, it's a big brand moment for us, and we've been enjoying it.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations on the launch. I know I'm personally a fan and a user, so it's always great when you see improvements being made, both on, of course, the realtors side, which we enjoy, but, being able to forward a link to our clients and have them enjoy their experience in viewing and searching for homes as well. So congrats to you guys. It's been a lot of fun to see your growth and improvements over the years.
Brilliant.
Do tell us, I noticed something. You guys made a mention in a newsletter that there was an inspiration that came from a potato peeler, of all things. Please, I'm so curious how a potato peeler inspired the latest improvements for REW.
The humble potato peeler, the vegetable peeler that sits in everyone's drawer. How could that possibly serve as an inspiration? Yeah, we as I said, we framed this as a personal experience. We understood that real estate is so much more than listings and agents all due respect to the incredible job that they do, it's more than closings, it's more than viewings, it's all of these things connected together in the context of somebody's life. And what we realized that REW provides is this helpful guide throughout this journey. So it's going to be an adventure. It's going to have highs and lows. It's going to have pitfalls and obstacles to look out for. And we're a guide that can give you better context information and help you along on that process. And so we started looking for inspiring products or brand concepts that had done similar things, but in different industries. And one of the really cool examples that stood out to us was this potato peeler example. So, it's the mid-'80s. There's this couple and Sam observes his wife really struggling with peeling a potato. She's got arthritis, and those things are difficult to use at the best of times. I mean, I think that's why it's punishment in a number of circles. It's like, you go peel the potatoes. And so she was struggling with this, but she had a background in architecture. And so she took out the modeling clay and said, imagine if, the handle wasn't so damn difficult to hold. And that spawned thousands of different iterations as they'd stuck bicycle handles on potato peelers, and in the end built a product that now is the product standard for a vegetable peeler. If you've seen those OXO potato peelers, they got the big fat rubbery handle. It's a story that's been inducted into the Museum for Modern Art as a permanent installation. It's an example of how when you take a problem that everyone faces and you approach it through a very human lens, you can create a better product and a better offering for everybody. And that's basically what we want to do at REW, is look at this very human process of buying a new home and figure out how we can round off those edges, how we can just make it that much easier and more pleasurable to participate in the market, because we think there's at least 10, 20, 30% of people that just find it too damn hard to even start. And if we can bring those people into the market, well, rising tide will lift all boats. And so, that's how the humble potato peeler has become part of our story now.
That's fantastic, and good on you for looking to other industries for inspiration. When you were talking there, it reminded me of a couple of quotes from Donald Miller. So if you're familiar with his work, that sounds very much in line with how you guys got to your solution. And yeah, fantastic. Thanks for walking us through all that. So maybe if you can, just a couple of key points. So if I'm an end user, I'm starting my home search today, and I go to REW, what are maybe a couple of the key things that you guys have introduced that I'm going to experience there that I might not get anywhere else?
Yeah, it's a great question. The actual product offering that we've built in REW over the years has already got some really novel and interesting features and content that you're not going to find on other platforms. And I don't think people really can articulate what those differences are until you start peeling back the layers. Like, as an example, we've got all the assessment data, and I know there's been some incredible increases in assessment data just between last year and this year. So all of a sudden, everybody noticed that assessment data is widely available in REW. We've had them there for 2-3 years, but now people really notice because it suddenly matters. We've been quietly aggregating everything else that we think really matters in your home search journey. Two really big blocks of content that we're proud of at the beginning of this year. The one is agent testimonial and sold listing data that take you guys through in a separate kind of discussion relevant to the realtor. But it's all about helping you as a home seeker get a better understanding of who the top professionals in the market are and what their specialities are, if you like. And then another block of content, which we think is probably the most exciting opportunity for us, is the new home content. Now, it's really unusual in the Canadian context to see this big separation between MLS resale listings, new home listings, and even rental listings as categories. In other markets that I've worked, and I've had a number of other global roles, those are always present on a real estate marketplace like REW. here you've got specialist sites that kind of focus on each of those niches in content. But if you think about the ordinary home seeker, it's a blended experience. They start out not really knowing if they're going to buy or move into a new place that's a rental. You start off not really knowing if you're going to buy a new home from a developer, or if you're going to buy the MLS listing that pops up adjacent to this new home complex that's being built. And yeah, we really believe in this blended home search experience, that you should have all of the context for the home buying decision in one place. And so, we've aggregated over 3,000 new home projects, those are active projects, over the course of the last few months. They're on the platform. In the Vancouver context, that's 300-400 projects just in the greater Vancouver area that are now composited with the MLS listing view. And increasingly, we're seeing buyers gravitate towards that because it's offering a different type of value. And I think it's also probably due to the listing constraint we're seeing in the MLS market, but it's good timing. And so those are just two examples of the content and how we're pushing that forward. But we've got another few ideas in the pipeline and features that we bring to market this year.
It sounds like you're really improving the experience for the knowledge-based consumer. We're making a very big decision, right, with what they're going to do with, especially in Vancouver. It's a very expensive decision. So, arming them with the right tools and know-how is incredibly important. And I think gets them further along the line too. It makes them feel a bit more comfortable with what's happening in the marketplace. You did mention when you were talking before that there were also some realtor products that were coming to the market as well. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on those?
Well, I touched on it briefly there, but in fact, Wednesday this week, so not long from this recording, we're going to be releasing two major features to our realtor members, or should I say on behalf of our realtor members. The one is this testimonial aggregation that we've done. So I don't know if you guys know, but we've already got 12,000 odd realtor recommendations on REW. So that's where buyers have specifically recommended the realtor that they've worked with and said, hey, this is, this person gave me a great experience. This is what they did for me. But we realized that we are only maybe a third of the recommendations that exist for realtors in the markets that we serve. And so we wanted to do the hard job on behalf of the realtors and aggregate that content into one place so that home seekers, if they're getting a look at a realtor profile, if they're trying to choose buyer or seller representation, they get the content and the information that you need. And so we've aggregated Google reviews, we've aggregated Yelp, we've aggregated from a bunch of other platforms, and now it's combined with the recommendations we already had on the platform. And so yeah, just a great way to see it all in one place.
Yeah, that's an awesome tool. I like that.
Simon, it comes across to me very much so that both from the end user standpoint and the realtor standpoint, that you've been listening to the people that are using your site. You know what I mean? Like it truly sounds like.
I hope so.
And what I mean by that, of course, is, sometimes there'll be a company or a business and they'll internally think what the public wants and then just push it out. And sometimes it's a very costly process. And honestly, everything I'm hearing here, it's like you've really listened to the people that are using it and the realtors that are using it, and everything that you're supplying is feeding a need and solving all sorts of problems that truly exist here. So congrats to you and your development team.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I've got to give a lot of credit to our product and technology team. They have been doing an amazing job over the last few months, and they continue to push out great updates. We're not a company that talks a lot about the things that we do. We hope that it's obvious to everybody that uses the platform that those things are there. But when you do talk about them, I think they are adding real value to the home seeker experience and to the industry that we partner with, So that testimonials piece is the one big piece of it. And the other piece, again, in the same vein as the testimonials, celebrating the great work that realtors are doing, is bringing all their sales data to life as well. So, we've got, I would modestly call them the best agent profiles in Canada on REW already, but enhancing those with all of the sold data that, these proof points, these social proof points of performance and engagement in their market, that's going to be a big uplift as well. So you've got the testimonials, which are like the subjective review-based content, and you've got the objective performance data, and it's all, creating more context for buyers.
I really like that, because the amount of times I've driven by a bus stop and seen, number one realtor, and then, in some minuscule font that you can barely read, it's asterisk 2009, 2011, right? And it's sort of like, is that still relevant? And in all honesty, I think this is great, because it's really modernizing and kind of creating a universal platform for like a common denominator for everybody to make decisions from, which I think is what it should be.
I didn't think about that. Our incumbent in the market is the bus stop and the back of the bus.
Well, I will say, Tom Ferry, who's arguably the biggest realtor or real estate coach in the world, he consistently says that we are living in the review economy. And it's so true. I mean, when's the last time you went to Amazon and didn't at least see how many people had given it X amount of stars? So naturally, of course, that's in the real estate space as well. So you guys have identified that nice and early. And yeah, I think for sure people are going to make decisions based on that. So again, kudos on the improvement. I love it.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to the industry feedback. So if you see that release drop this week, and you'd like to reach out to us and chat about how it's been implemented, please, we're all ears.
Absolutely. Yeah. This will be released on Saturday. We're recording this on a Monday, but so yeah, the realtor things will be out. And yeah, by the time anyone is listening to this, jump on REW.ca right now and check out the improvements. It's very impressive.
Cool.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the marketplace too, because as it's top of mind for everybody. I mean, we're trying to improve the buyer experience, if you will, in a marketplace that is anything but friendly to a buyer. And I'm just kind of interested to know, last year we hit all-time highs in terms of sales volume, in terms of price points. So what was REW seeing in that time frame? Were you guys seeing, all-time high levels of traffic? Are you still seeing that? And where do you think that's going? I mean, without a doubt, I think a lot of people are moving online and looking at everything online to begin with. So maybe making that distinction too is important, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you talk about breaking records last year. I didn't have that much context of the Vancouver market until I arrived here, and it's been just shy of 2 years. So, whether it's breaking records in the real estate market or seemingly breaking climate-related records every month that I'm here, either it's too hot or too cold or too much snow or too much rain, but the context I have of Vancouver is a very crazy, energetic real estate market. I mean, I think last year the sales were up well over 30% on a year-on basis. And okay, there'd been COVID the year before, but that year was also a breakout year. Yeah. So it's just, frankly astounding what's been happening in the market. The average price is up almost 20% in a year. Average prices, but you see that translate into some of the assessment increases year on year, and I'm seeing 50% increases in some areas, and an average is sort of anywhere between 25 and 40% in 1 year. Mm-hmm. So breaking records feels normal, and yet by definition is exceptional. Mm-hmm. So what we've seen on the platform, traffic-wise, is the traffic levels were definitely increased and elevated from June 2020 all the way through to, say, March 2021, where it peaked. We saw our all-time peak in demand and traffic then, and then saw a slow pullback from there all the way through 2021 and even into the beginning of this year. But when I say slow pullback, it's is in no way connected to the lack of inventory that we're seeing. We're seeing 30 to 40% less listings on the market now than we saw at the beginning of last year. And yet we're seeing the same traffic as we saw a year ago. So you've got the same elevated levels of demand, a much lower level of inventory, which suggests that we've actually got a higher level of demand, because usually listing inventory and traffic are related. It's like, if you've got more things to look at, you spend more time on the website, you develop more sessions, and if you have those less, if you factor in the lower listing counts, then demand is at least as high as it was a year ago when we were breaking all of those records. So, I mean, that's obviously a really good thing. But then I think you also mentioned, Ryan, the significant headwinds that buyers face at the beginning of this year. All of the sentiment that we were trading off maybe 18 months ago, coming out of the pandemic and the evolving space that housing had, how important and critical it was to people, the lower interest rates, all those things haven't changed, but the sentiment around where they're going to go has definitely changed. And it's putting pressure, I think, on buyers. But yeah, to answer your question about overall traffic and demand, it's pretty much where it was a year ago. And that's what you're seeing. It's like this supply crunch is having a real detrimental effect on the market. Otherwise, it would still be flying.
Well, I mean, yeah, arguably, if you're seeing the same level of demand and, supply is, at least over the last 6 years, 60% less than what it was, if you look at a longer term trend, it's going to become more and more fierce. It's going to get progressively worse, even if the level of demand just maintains. If we're not replenishing the inventory, it's going to get more and more difficult, right? So
I mean, if you look at it in particular in the context of Greater Vancouver, Lower Mainland, it's like the listing levels are just far too low to support the level of market activity that's clearly there. 6,000-7,000 listings are just not nearly enough for the market. So yeah, we got to figure out ways to grow supply.
Well, I think generally speaking, a lot of sellers are terrified of not being able to buy something. They're not, the need to sell their home isn't going any or hasn't changed. It's the fact that where are they going to go? What are they going to buy? Right. So we're seeing a lot of hesitation in terms of I think people coming to market with their product, even though they need to, just out of sheer uncertainty about where they're going to land. Right. And that's a bit of an issue. So again, I think, you guys pushing new projects and you guys pushing pre-sale opportunities is hopefully going to start to widen that perspective a little bit. And if we're getting into some nitty gritty in terms of data here, have you seen any divergence in terms of, because, single family went, like you said, on average went up by about 20%. Are you starting to see people now peel out of that segment and is more traffic going into townhomes? Because I can tell you, it certainly feels like that on the ground. There's definitely a huge contest for single family homes, without a doubt. But it seems like the contest for half duplex, and largely probably because of price point and inventory. But I just wonder, because if we often say that there's a spillover effect of when things get too expensive, people, shed the idea of getting a single family and they move into a duplex, and then from a duplex down to a big apartment and so on and so forth. Are you seeing that on your platform as well?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think it's driven by a couple of things, but yeah, first of all, affordability is probably the biggest driver. It's like, as you were saying, it's like initially the response in the pandemic was, I need more space. I'm going to be at home a whole lot. I'm going to work from home. I can justify having a bigger place. And there was this frenzy in the freestanding, detached family home space. But then the listing supply and the overall price growth has been such that people start making different decisions. And what we're seeing is huge growth in, leads per listing is probably the biggest proxy we have for demand. They're kind of two proxies. The one is views per listing, And so that's how interested people are at a particular listing type. But then if you really want to see demand, like what are people inquiring about, what are people really wanting to go and view, then you look at leads per listing. And we've seen the greatest growth in leads per listing in areas that are within striking distance of Vancouver. So again, not even metro core markets, and in the type of homes that you're describing, townhomes and particularly apartments and condos, which is interesting because apartments and condos in markets like Delta, Port Coquitlam, Abbotsford, Langley, those are not really the predominant type of units that's built out there. But there is huge demand for those types of units right now. So it speaks to this affordability requirement. Like I think a lot of people are looking for pockets of value, and they're seeing more value in a unit like that than they're going to get from a detached home. But I think it also speaks to the changing demographics in the market right now. You know, the initial spate of sales that we had, like the first 6 to 12 months, I'd say there were a lot of younger buyers entering the market. We could see that in the search trend data, but in the actual transactional data, there was a lag, and it was more of your, you know, Gen X trading up, you know, moving into different neighborhoods, moving a bit further out because commute times weren't that important. Now we're seeing a huge flurry of interest from younger buyers. I think there's this, it's almost like there's a sense that if they don't get on the train's going to leave them behind.
Well, think
it's
about
FOMO, you know.
Think about what's happened in the last 2 years. What else are they going to know? I mean, even in the last 5 years. I mean, what else do they know, right? I don't.
Do I
disagree.
leave it another 5 years? I mean, where's the market going to be? So the idea of staying off the property ladder is almost worse for people than getting on the property ladder, despite all the challenges. And so they're looking for the first available rung, and the first available rung is this type of less expensive, high value stock that's out there. But the problem is there's just so little of it that you know, you're seeing new developments sell out in a day. And I know that's always been a little bit of a story with Vancouver, but now it's a problematic story, you know. And you either get that, or you get developers that really throttle the sale in order to, you know, shift the price over time. And that, you know, it's great for the developer, but again, very uncertain for the consumers that are entering the market. And so it creates even more urgency and panic than it should. So, yeah, I mean, supply is, we've been talking about it now for a good few minutes, but it's definitely a macro challenge to the market out here. And we've got to figure out good solutions for it, because all the data, all the evidence is that it is a big and long-term problem.
Absolutely. Simon, you said something interesting about your website traffic, that it peaked in March of 2021. Well, that was the same month that we hit all-time high sales. So interestingly, it sounds to me like a lot of people that were on your site, you know, a lot of them, the vast majority even, they weren't just entering and thinking of buying or entering the process and ending up 6-9 months later in a home. Those were people that were actively shopping.
Yeah. Well, it's probably a little bit of both. Like, the one thing that we definitely have noticed in the data is that people are taking longer and longer in the consideration phase in their home seeking journey. And it's part of the reason why we want to build a better and more supportive platform for those people over time. Because we know that realtors are, you know, busy, focused individuals. They can't really afford to nurture a buyer for 12 months, 14 months, 16 months ahead of a transaction. They're most effective when it's like, let's get in, let's view some homes, let's make some decisions, let's put some offers, let me support you in that process. So we definitely see this long consideration phase, and it seems to be growing every year. And that's what our platform is really there to do, to support people through that process. But at the same time, when people do get into that offer stage of the transaction, where they're really engaged with the market, that's when they're on the site every day, 4 times a day, looking at everything that pops up, going back to the same listings over and over and over again, And so that's why I would say in March, our traffic and engagement stats peaked with the market, is because that wave of transactions, people are on the site really, really, really making decisions about the one. I mean, I was the same. I was just maybe a few months later than that when I bought my place. But yeah, you just get stuck in. You're completely connected for a few weeks.
Obsessively.
And
then when the assessments came out, did you check REW for your property?
Oh man, yeah. I sort of missed it because it came out. We launched them on the 31st, the night of the 31st, and then I heard about them in my first meeting of the year on the 4th. And about 15 seconds after that meeting ended, I checked my assessment value and I was like, "Oh man, I'm gonna have to dispute that." But yeah, it moved a lot.
So tell me, Simon, based on everything we've kind of talked about, you've got a really good understanding of probably the last few years in terms of data, in terms of what people are looking at. You're curating the experience, at least online, for the end users and partners. We've had a pretty crazy couple of years. What's your prediction for 2022? I mean, we came out with our own predictions video, and I think that's at the top of everybody's mind here. And you've got access to some really interesting data, so I'd love to hear what your thoughts are going to be for the coming year.
It's been such an interesting roller coaster ride. I mean, that's the one thing I would just say. Even having the data at hand that we do have, when you try and create inferences from the historical trends, it's not that helpful, to be honest. I've never seen this in over 10, 12 years of running real estate marketplaces in different parts of the world. It's usually a very predictable cycle in terms of interest and seasonality across the market. And every year, just because the adoption of digital technology is there, you see this organic growth year on year on top of the same predictable trend. If we look at the last 3 years of REW data, it's peaks and troughs and waves that we've never seen, or I've never seen, should I say. Unseasonal boosts in demand and interest, unseasonal lulls. Like, I couldn't really understand how much the market sort of went away and went to sleep between June and July last year. And I think that just related to the fact that it was a little exhausted after the roller coaster that preceded that. Yeah. And so you can't predict that. If you're just looking at it from a seasonal point of view, you'd think that you'd be able to make some judgment calls. So that all of that is a big disclaimer, like asterisk. Even looking at the data, it's difficult to tell.
But just to comment on that for just a second. I mean, is that not a glaring reflection of kind of the state of some of our economy? I mean, speaking to the macro picture of just housing and generally speaking of the economy over the last 3 years, I mean, we've been restarting, we've been pumping money into it. There's, huge troughs and valleys and exhaustion and pandemics. It's crazy. I mean, I think, on the top of a lot of my buyers' minds, they keep bringing up, like, when am I ever going to get to try and negotiate, like a normal human being? And I just don't actually see that coming for some time.
Yeah. No, you're quite right. I mean, I think we can talk about what predictions I do have, even not really having a strong sense of what we can infer from the historic data. But I totally agree with you. Like, the macro environment that we exist in today is still one that we're trying to figure out. Mm-hmm. It's like all of the normal precepts have, to greater or lesser degree, changed. Industries have changed. The distribution of income across different industries has changed. The way we interact with work has changed. The nature of commuting, not just locally, but like across Canada or across the world has changed. So, there's a lot of like big things that I don't think we've really figured out how to factor for yet. But the one thing that keeps ringing true for me is that in this context of like heightened insecurity, in this context of heightened uncertainty that people have, the one thing that makes sense to people is their own home. And so that's why you've just seen it as one of the big pillars that capital and savings and effort and focus has retreated into or been focused towards. And I don't think that's going to change, because the uncertainty picture, that instability picture, is not changing. So just when you think you've kind of got a bead on this whole, we're vaccinated now, awesome, then we have the biggest wave of the entire pandemic post-vaccination. Like,
what? Yeah.
So it's really difficult to feel certain about anything. And so I think that's why the real estate market in particular is under so much pressure from a demand point of view. But of course, now that uncertainty that's in the rest of the economy feels like it's going to encroach on the real estate space. So if you think about forecasting, it does feel like low inventory continues, because it's very difficult to see what the actual solve for that is, at least in 2022. What you said is like, the people that maybe could sell but don't know what else to buy, well, they don't come into the market despite the higher prices on offer. The new home stock, well, that's a macro solution. It'd be great to figure that out together, but it's not going to help in 2022. And then you've got the existing kind of MLS-based content that's coming into the real estate market. It's not really enough. So low inventory certainly continues. Demand remains elevated. We're seeing that traffic trend continue. We expect that demand is going to continue just because of this uncertainty that I spoke about. So that's going to have an increasing impact on price, I guess.
Interestingly, so it's sort of like you've got two kind of things taking place in the market. You've got this almost cultural shift where you're wanting people to or they're feeling more and more insecure in their world. So the things they're finding security in are the things that they can tangibly grasp, being their home, right? And I tend to agree with you. I think that's not only happening in the real estate industry, I think that's happening in large part in the finance industry. It's why we've seen such a rise in crypto. It's why we're seeing a rise in decentralized finance, because people are trying to get more and more control as, it appears that things are getting more and more out of it, right? So I think that's a really interesting take. I've always looked at it from the sort of data perspective. How many, permanent residences are we getting in the next couple of years? But to think of it from a cultural shift is something novel for me. And I think thanks for bringing that up, because I never really thought about it that way.
Well, that was the incredible thing for me, is like witnessing this happen in a controlled experiment. Like, you removed all of the external factors in the last 2 years. Like, you didn't have the high levels of immigration that you would usually have. You didn't have the high levels of foreign investment that you'd usually have. And yet you had a record all-time real estate market. So, hey, that just highlights this unusual social and cultural component that housing does play, and that we often forget that housing plays in a society. And now you layer back on top those compounding issues. It's like, oh, okay, well, we're back to all-time immigration target highs, and we're layering back in the foreign direct investment that comes with some of that immigration, and what is the market going to do?
Simon, you touched on something important too, and that's so true, in that it's so hard to predict right now, because essentially ever since the pandemic struck, every historical sense of a real estate cycle has kind of just been blown out of the water. It has been nonsensical for almost 2 years here now. And I think both Ryan and I can definitely attest that, we're recording this on January 17th. And I'll say the first 2 weeks of January feels like a peak March or April. It is so active. Every offer, 9 out of 10 offers we put out this year have been in multiples. And, we're seeing record highs basically hit every week here still. It's unnatural. It's a bit dangerous. It's a crisis, I would say, but a bit of a foresight into what can happen in the next few months until, barring a black swan event, every metric is essentially pointing towards prices continuing their upward trend.
Yeah, I mean, there are things that could slow down. Like the biggest wild card for me is still the interest rate.
Yeah.
I think how inflation is being viewed and the different tools that the Bank of Canada and the federal government seem to have at their disposal to deal with inflation is interesting, because traditionally I come from high inflation environments and high interest rate environments. Some of the work that we did in Southeast Asia, or the platform that I ran in South Africa, you're used to high levels of inflation and high interest rates. Here, it's fascinating to see the interest rates go up, but the reaction to it be so delayed and so deliberate. I would have expected it to already change. Do you know what I mean? So that is why I say it's a wild card. But you see a lot of the banks pricing in interest rate growth this year, and some of it quite exceptional interest rate growth. So that could have a cooling effect on demand for sure, but not to the unless that interest rate cycle does something crazy like it did in the 80s. It's not going to be enough to balance the supply and demand deficit that we see.
Well, no, I think the big difference too there, Simon, is, right now the government is also at record levels of debt. And so raising the interest levels to points where they can't pay back their own debts, that's not going to work either, right? So, I do think that we're going to see interest rate hikes, there's without a doubt, but to what degree is going to be really interesting. I don't necessarily believe that it's going to cool demand in the way that we hope, because of the systemic issues in supply that already exist and have existed really for over a decade, right? It's likely going to take, in my opinion, at least a decade to sort out, right? But I mean, and to that point, I'm a big advocate that I think public and private sectors should coexist together, and some sort of consultation should really take place. I mean, look at the data that you guys have, look at the data that we have. I've never had a phone call from an MP or anything, right? So
I welcome one. I really do. I think it would be awesome to participate in the solution. This problem, or I think it's beyond a problem now. I think it really is a crisis. Needs a proactive solution. It needs partnerships between public enterprise and private enterprise, and we got to figure out how to solve this problem together. And by the way, it could be Canada's biggest problem right now, but in my mind, it is absolutely Canada's biggest opportunity. There's a reason that I've moved halfway across the world and I live here now. It is a compelling country at a great moment in its history, and it really does. It needs this future thinking. It needs a vision. Vancouver Vision 2030, whatever it is, 10 years out. What do we want the city to look like? Who do we want to live here? How do we house all of those people in a meaningful way? There is a very exciting opportunity there. It's very compelling when you start talking about the millions of homes that actually need to be built. Millions of homes mean new communities, new neighborhoods, new business opportunities, new infrastructure projects. It is a new dawn for sectors of the Canadian economy, and that is an exciting thing.
But I think that that's going to require consultation between private and public sectors. And we keep getting these decisions or announcements, especially from the federal level, which make no sense to me. I mean, you recently, we went through an election. We got told we were going to build 4 million homes in four years, and then there's going to be housing accelerator funds and all this kind of stuff. What's your take on the current situation? I mean, it sounds like obviously you're all about amalgamating ideas. Who leads the charge here? Because everything we're being told at a political level is just, it feels like we're being lied to and promised stuff that's just never going to happen. I mean, you're talking about, you have real data, real demand numbers that, it could back up what they need to do on the other side, at least for Vancouver, right? Or at least on the West Coast. And we need more buy-in. We need more buy-in from that
for
side.
sure. Yeah. So I think, so you're 100% right. And this idea is shaping in my mind that the way systems are set up, particularly local government systems, is there is a fair representation for communities already living in particular neighborhoods. You've got the not in my backyard type of people, which take advantage of that representation, I would say, in an unfortunate and maligned way. But there is fair representation for the people that live there. Their structures, their MPs, their processes. I mean, even now, if I want to dispute my assessment, it's actually a very civil, easy process to engage with.
Yeah.
I can be heard. The people that can't be heard are the people that want to live there.
That's right.
And so there's like a complete lack of advocacy for new communities or new participants in communities, new residents. And that's where I think platforms like REW and even the engagements that Realtors have with clients could be so valuable to the concept of urban planning and the concept of development permitting and building a better overall system, because you've got that representation. It's like if you know that 6,500 people earning between this and this move into this neighborhood within the next 12 to 24 months. Oh, okay. Well, now I've got a meaningful number that I can
get shovels in the ground, right? Is what it'll say.
Yeah.
It's, now we need to, I'm just surprised with this level of, promise at the federal level. Where are the announcements for, 400 unit subdivisions and breaking ground in or building out, new services to a new community that's going to, like something like a Mission, it should be exploding well beyond the sizes that it currently has, right? I think, thanks for your input, because I'm a big advocate for that, but you're right. Nobody's advocating for the buyers, we're
not, I think what we're saying is we're not expecting, public departments, and we're not expecting the government to go and build a whole bunch of houses for people.
No.
But we do think that there can be engagement on how best to stimulate that kind of once in a generation building projects. And I think the model for me that I really like elsewhere in the world are these development zones, where you basically say, hey, we've got 3 or 4 key development zones around Greater Vancouver. That doesn't say we don't develop everywhere else. Of course, there are normal processes to permit projects anywhere that they might make sense. But we've consulted with platforms and aggregations of data. We've figured out what the right development zones and nodes should look like. And we're going to focus infrastructure spending around that node. We're going to focus permitting processes and speed up the delivery around permitting in those nodes. We're going to, we're going to have tax breaks for the companies that participate in building out those projects, not increasing levels of tax.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Even if they're short term,
I'm sensing Simon for mayor right now. You got some great policies. I would back them.
A handful. But I do. To your point, Ryan, I think you're 100% right. There are things in the industry that we talk about. Things like the pending home equity tax, or blind bidding regulations, or things that seem to dominate realtors' headspace.
But they don't.
But
change
those
anything.
Yeah, but those don't really matter in the
No.
context of just building more homes. So I also encourage real estate associations and realtors themselves to figure out how we can advocate for more overall housing. Because this issue of like housing prices skyrocketing is not actually that helpful. It doesn't grow the pie for everyone.
At all. No.
It's going to become more and more of a problem. And already we're seeing it's constraining the market. The demand is there, but we're not seeing the volume of transactions we saw in 2021 because there's just not enough supply. You know, you extrapolate that out 3-4 years. Well, everyone's got less, not more. And yeah,
there's a general misconception too. I mean, Dan and I often get, questions from buyers and sellers saying, "Oh, it's a super hot market. It's a good time to be a realtor." It's actually not. It's a terrible time to be a real estate agent, because the amount of effort required just to get somebody into a home right now. Dan and I would love for a balanced marketplace. Just even to trend towards that for a few years.
This does feel like one of those moments. That feels like one of those world's smallest violin moments. It's like,
that's right.
Feel sorry for me. This market is so hot. But you're quite right. Like I remember speaking to a realtor the other day, and he's like, "Man, this January is really crazy, and I'm bringing four units, to the market. So it was a great month for him, but he was frustrated because it meant, I don't know, at least 10 offers per listing, all of which have to, the paperwork has to be done, the decisions have to be done, the discussions with the client have to be done. And so exactly to your point, he's going to end up selling 4 units.
Well,
but taking 2 or 3 genuine offers to his seller would have been way better than having to deal with 10, 15 offers.
On the flip side, that very same realtor is having to go and break 14 hearts, right? And that's the story that nobody ever hears. I mean, we have to make those calls too, right? We have to tell everybody that they were unsuccessful, and it's heartbreaking. Yeah. Because we're not dealing necessarily with people's houses, we're dealing with their hopes and their dreams, right? Yeah. And that's what kind of gets lost at the policy level, right? And at the newspaper level too.
And this is what I meant by if we look at the human toll that this process takes, and if we create an experience that reflects and resonates with that human experience, then we'll see that 20, 30, maybe more % of buyers are actually out of the market because it's so damn hard. You get rejected 3 times. What makes you keep coming back for more heartache? Well, maybe you just don't. Maybe it's like, okay, well, I'll buy in 5 years' time.
Yeah.
And that is actually suppressing the economic recovery that we could have, for sure.
Absolutely correct.
We're seeing too a lot of those people shifting to the pre-sale market, because there's still a very good chance in that space to buy without, a competing scenario. We are actually hearing some instances now where it's actually getting to bidding war levels on pre-sales, but that's the exception. That's not the norm. So some people are like, look, I'll just get a home because I can. It's okay that I won't get to move in for 2 years because at least I'm technically in the market. So we've seen the pre-sale space go, extremely ballistic as well lately. So it's something to pay attention to. If maybe you've been outbid 3, 4, 5, 6 times, maybe pre-sale is something to consider.
I know a website that has a whole bunch of pre-sales.
Well, guys, I think this is a great place to wrap it up. So obviously, if you are a buyer, seller, renter, or just curious about real estate at all, at any level, REW.ca is absolutely your place to start. Simon, final words go to you.
Well, I would just say thank you to all the loyal home seekers out there that put up with the challenges in this market, use our platform on a daily basis. We hope we're doing right by you. If you've got any concerns, please reach out to us or find me on LinkedIn and reach out to me directly. We want to make your experience as fulsome as it can be.
Awesome.
Amazing. Perfectly said. Thank you so much again for being our guest today. We'll see if you can trump our other #1 download to be the new #1. All right. Thanks as always, everyone, for watching and listening, and we will see you next week.